Hi everyone, Marina Kukla here to walk you through Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Work Success, CBTw, Session 9, Dealing Effectively with People at Work. So you'll start with your introductory elements, the work check-ins. Every veteran or person present should offer the work check-in. Then you'll go over the take-home from the previous session, which session 8 was working on these effective communication skills, verbal and nonverbal. And then you'll go through this agenda here on page 84, these 4 check marks, identifying communication style. We have a narrative today, learning how to effectively manage difficult emotions and assess your thinking when dealing with people at work, learning how to effectively work with people from a variety of cultures, and practicing these skills during the week, of course. So we start out with our narrative exercise. We haven't had a narrative in a while. So just as a reminder, we present the sort of exercise and what we're going to be doing, as well as some question prompts. And so in this one, we're going to be exploring our interpersonal styles. So here, the 5 sort of prompts that we have basically try to get at what type of person you are with other people, how you deal with others at work and interact with them, and whether your relationships have been sort of supportive and positive, or maybe more stormy or difficult, and what role do other people play in your life. So I'll just, as a reminder, say that veterans or people in the group, they don't have to answer every question. These are just some jumping off points. So they can answer one of these if it makes sense to them, or they could touch on all of them. Or there may be something else regarding their interpersonal style that they would rather write about. So the idea here with this narrative is that you would go through sort of the purpose of the exercise and then the 5 prompts. And then each veteran would sit down with their manuals and they would take maybe 10 minutes or so, however long they need, and write down some thoughts about their interpersonal style. We've had other exercises, of course, where veterans sit and write in their manuals to practice whatever strategy or tool that we're using that week. So this is one, though, where the idea is that we're trying to help people sort of grow in their sense of self as a worker or as a person in a career or working towards that. So that's the idea here. And so this also serves as a jumping off point for what we are going to talk about today and how to deal more effectively with people in the employment context. So once people have had however long, 5 or 10 minutes to write, then you would invite people in the group to share or talk about theirs if they wish. Usually multiple people do that. It kind of depends. So one modification that you can use, especially for veterans who may not have their manuals with them to write in, you can ask them if they have a scrap piece of paper or a notebook or something to write on. They can just write on that. Or if they don't have anything, they can just sit and think about their interpersonal style. I would still ask those people to share, though. I think the idea would be that they would sit and sort of sit and try to reflect on themselves, but that we would still involve them in the sharing portion where people kind of talk through theirs. As a facilitator, this also tends to lead to opportunities for reflections. So as people are sharing their interpersonal styles, a lot of times what comes up are previous patterns, good, and they tend to be more negative patterns that have caused them problems and issues and sort of tripped them up in the past. So this would be a good opportunity to reflect some of those things, especially as it relates to difficult interaction styles with other people, trouble working with other people on the job, or finding other people confusing, or just noticing that one prefers to work solo or alone, or with few people, maybe with one other person, but not in a huge team of people. There could be other things as well. So I think this is a great opportunity to use those basic behavioral reflections as well as those cognitive reflections. Continue to point out when you're hearing thoughts. You may notice that people are already answering their unhealthy thinking and you can point that out, or you just might notice thoughts that do need answering, because we're going to do the 4 A's this week. So as you notice those things here, just use those basic reflections. You don't have to reflect everything. You don't have to tie a nice bow on it. You don't have to interpret everything or fix it for the person, whatever issue they're having. So, all right. So once you've gone through that, then there's some education here on page 87. about managing difficult emotions and unhealthy thinking when dealing with people in the work context. And so there's some things that you'll read under this consider this box about workplace relationships. And then under this blue box, we have some tips. So these are tools that people can use and coping skills when dealing with people. So we have some behavioral strategies that we've already gone over in previous sessions, our breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, those pleasant activities and the positive self-statements, and then whatever tools they've found effective. There are probably many things that they can continue to use and capitalize on. And then we also ask people to use our cognitive strategies. So here on 88, we should check our thinking related to people. We have a lot of thoughts that need answering that are unhealthy, unhelpful, maybe inaccurate, maybe all three, or just very negative. And for a lot of people, this is really where they've gotten in trouble. They may have narratives or stories about losing jobs because they blew up at work on people verbally or even physically, or they just couldn't get along with other people. And so oftentimes these issues can lead to job loss, as you know. So anyways, that's why we're going to check that unhealthy thinking. We're going to assess, become more aware, assess, answer, and then act to support that, and then finally accept. So our primary didactic then is the 4 A's. Here, and then we have on page 89, we have the full set of steps and what you might do: aware, check your thinking, notice your body, notice your emotions, as well as maybe your behaviors. Are you avoiding? Are you doing other things? That signals, okay, what is my thinking and how is it playing a role here? If you're always blowing up on people at work, or you feel like others are talking down to you, okay, well, what's my thoughts that kind of go along with that? That signals to us, I need to pay attention to my thinking. That's the aware step. And then of course our assess and answer, we kind of know about this. You may hear answer thoughts, as I already commented on at other portions of this session. Point those out. And also I like to give some positive reinforcement when people are using those, because that's great. And then we have our acts, so our steps to support that healthier thinking and also to support our work goals. The act steps also may go directly correspond with this aware. If you have a ton of anxiety and that's kind of leading to some issues with people at work and with talking with others, then you might do some act steps to actually address your anxiety. Maybe you'll do breathing. Maybe you'll take a walk. Maybe you'll talk with someone about your concerns. So that's another way to use ACT. Of course, we want it to support our goals and our healthy thinking, but it might correspond to with some of the effects that we have to our emotions and our body here, some of the negative effects and how we can better manage those. If it's anger, then maybe that's tripping a person up related to other people at work, then maybe that ACT step is actually doing some coping skills to manage that anger. And then finally, we have our accept step. We can't control other people, but we can control ourselves. This is the big thing. Sometimes veterans will say, well, if only this person at work would act differently, my supervisor, my coworkers, if they would just do their jobs, if they would be better in some way, I wouldn't have these problems. And there might be some truth to that. I mean, that might be somewhat accurate or very accurate statement, or it might not be accurate at all. But this comes to the accept step, that we can only control what we do as workers and in our professions, in our careers, in our jobs. We can't control what other people do. And then finally, we have our 4 A's related to people. So we use a scenario and we clearly spell it out related to sort of an interpersonal issue or related to people. It could also be something as simple as having to talk with someone in a job interview for a person who's unemployed, and they have difficulty with that because that's dealing with people. So there could be different scenarios. Usually it relates to difficulties in past jobs or a current job with someone on the job, a boss, a coworker, or series of these. And then you would walk through in your folders. And also I previously emailed this. I have come up with an example, and there's also a blank PDF there for your own example if you want, but you can share that with the group and walk through that step by step. Please allow time for folks to actually go through their own examples And again, you can make modifications if people don't have their manuals to write in, but I would still suggest that you go through at least examples of some people in group. And the ideal setup would be that people go through their own examples. So you save 5 minutes for people to be able to write in their books. And then subsequently you come together and you give people an opportunity to share those things. But the idea, again, is that we want to demonstrate to people how they would use this in their lives, and particularly in the context of others. And then lastly, we have our cultural awareness piece that we've added to this section here, that you should be respectful of other people and their cultures and be non-judgmental. Now, of course, there are many other key elements of cultural awareness. And so going through this education, as well as having a group discussion about what some of those elements might be, is important. I think this is also important to give some time to. We don't want to just gloss over this at the end. So this is a longer session with a bit more content. And so pacing will be important here so that there is adequate time to be able to discuss this. We're also discussing cultural awareness in the work setting. We're working with people who are different from us, from various cultures, may have different values and beliefs. And so just the idea that that's going to be true, and that diversity should be something that's welcomed. And it's certainly going to be the case that sometimes we have to agree to disagree. And it's not our job to stereotype others or to judge those beliefs and values. So I think that those are the things that we've noticed. We added this in because we frankly noticed a lot of these sort of stereotype beliefs, prejudice, and discrimination among some of the people who came through based on their statements of working with people different from them. So this seemed really important. We also tend to ask people in this section sort of what cultures maybe they ascribe to, like being a veteran, that's a culture. And then there are subcultures, like being, having been in the Army or the Marines, the Marine Corps or the Navy. I mean, that's one we usually start with that everyone can understand. That's an example. And so there are many other cultures that you might come from just based on who you are and your shared history and beliefs and practices. So sometimes that's part of the discussion that seems important, and we all belong to multiple cultures. That's another part of that discussion. So this is really important and also delicate and sensitive to deliver. And you can have obviously that freedom as you see fit as a facilitator to do what seems best in the moment and for the veterans and the folks in your group as regarding this. Okay, and then we have our take home, which is thinking about interpersonal style. What tool or coping skill do you want to practice this week with people in particular? If folks aren't working or they don't have that work context to practice it in, we definitely want them to practice it in other areas of their life that might be non-work related. Family, a neighbor, your landlord, someone at the bus stop, whatever it is, we want you to be able to practice some of these coping skills. We also talked about many communication skills last week. Maybe they want to continue to focus on those, like an I statement. So whatever seems to make sense is what they should focus on. We ask that they actually jot down in this space here what they plan to work on, and then they can take notes during the week here to be able to discuss that at the beginning of the next section. Okay, so this is session 9, interpersonal effectiveness at work. Thanks again, and I hope it goes well.